the Sound Of's weekly top 7 lists. Here are Ann Carlini and Steve Black's selections from 7 to 1.
7 things. This time we decided to kind of comb through some of our rock and roll memorabilia, things that we've accumulated over the years in our radio and concert travels. You want to start? You want me to start?
You go ahead, Steve. Are you going to go from 7 to 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 7, I have Corey Taylor, who is Stone Sour and Slipknot, also an author. So he has, multiple books. And I'm sure lots of people have taken their books and had them autographed. But this was recently after I had published a book. And I offered him a book trade. I'll give you mine for yours. And so he had me autograph a book for him, which was weird. And then he signed his book for me and wrote something about the book exchange. So like from one author to another, good to meet you, Corey Taylor, something along those lines, I don't know how many people will ever have that opportunity where they're sort of trading, book for book with another author.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of got a pretty unique place in my bookshelf.
That's cool. I also have a book on my list, David Lee Roth, Crazy from the Heat.
Yeah?
Yeah, I had him sign it, Kiss Me. Also was the day that I drank sake for the first time with his bodyguard, Eddie. That was cool meeting him. I always loved David Lee Roth, and it was great to have like that little moment. He had come into the radio station to promote the book, and they were drinking sake in the kitchen. So
that's funny.
Went ahead and joined him.
I think I would have had him sign something about a glazed donut. Remember that video where it ends with him in full face paint, and he's like, "And a glazed donut."
That's so David Lee Roth.
Yeah. Super cool. Number 6 on my list. This is from a long time ago, so unfortunately I don't remember the name of the restaurant. But Tom Scholz from Boston, guitarist from Boston, is also an engineer. I mean, he's just a genius of a guy to talk to. And we had this big dinner down at a place called Fishbones. And there was probably 20 of us there, but I got seated next to Tom, and he is a hardcore, extra double hardcore vegan. Like, so, and I don't even remember what I ordered, but it was certainly something that lived, and we just traded barbs at each other the whole night in a friendly way, And I had heard so many things about, he's such a jerk. If you eat meat, he's not nice to you. And nothing could have been further from the truth. So anyway, later that week, this wasn't in the email era, but later that week I got a card in the mail, like from Tom Scholz, and I opened it up, and it was a gift card to a vegan restaurant in Detroit, and it said, "Love the conversation, give it a try sometime."
Wow.
And I'm like, dude bought me a gift card. Like,
wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've heard the same thing about him, that he's kind of like this, he is kind of a genius.
Oh, very much. Yeah.
So he is a little quirky, but that's great. Did you ever use the card, or did you keep it?
I ended up giving it away to somebody else. I got involved with a conversation. A friend of my first wife's who was a vegan, and you know what? I have this gift card that I'm never going to use, and I gave it to somebody else.
But you kept the note?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's super cool. See, now I also have something that's related to food. Scott Weiland came in here, and he was promoting his solo album, I want to say 12 Bar Blues. I can't remember exactly what it's called right now. But, and I just love that album too. But he came into the station to promote it, and he was sitting in the kitchen, and all the tables were covered with those plastic tablecloths.
Okay.
I'm not sure why. I think just because they brought in catering for the band. And I sat there and I told him, I said, well, I really like the album. And I said, would you sign something for me? He said, sure. He goes, what do you got? And I looked around and I said, sign the tablecloth. He goes, okay. So he signed it, and nice. I cut it out and I took it home. And I still have it.
That's awesome.
That little round piece that Scott Weiland signed. Yeah, he was a little out of it. It was in those days he was struggling.
Yeah.
But it was so cool to meet him.
Yeah, that was... I ran into Scott once or twice in his last couple of years, and it was tough to be around him,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But God bless him.
Yeah.
God bless him.
Rest in peace.
At number 5, Zach Wilde, who was a world-class alcoholic at one point in time. He knew he was having trouble. He knew he had to quit drinking, and I just watched him plow through, I don't know, 8-10 bottles of Beck's. I mean, and it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, it wasn't like it was late into the evening. And at some point he said, I'm not going to be able to drink much longer, so let me sign one of these bottles for you. Like, he volunteered it, not me. And he, signed it in his crazy Zach Wilde, Ozzy, BLS, a bunch of other initials, the date, all kinds of stuff. So I kept it. I'm like, well, okay. It's a little weird, but I have it.
He was drinking at the time he signed the bottle for you?
Yeah. He was still drinking. Of course, he's been totally bone dry for years now.
So he was kind of like saying, okay, I'm going to go sober at this date. And he knew it.
He knew he was having health problems. He knew that if he didn't sober up, was probably going to cost him his life. And then shortly after that, maybe 6 months after that, he had a medical emergency, and that was it. He was never able to drink again. The medication they put him on to treat him for his blood clots will not interact with alcohol, so he cannot drink now. Doesn't have a choice.
Boy, I'm trying to remember whether or not, because I have something signed by Zach Wilde too, and I can't remember whether or not he was drinking. But
was it a bottle of Beck's?
No, it wasn't. But it was at the time when Guitar Hero was huge, and they had issued a guitar, which is a remote control for Guitar Hero,
right.
And it was the Zach Wilde guitar, based on his,
bullseye.
classic bullseye design. And I heard he was coming into the station, so I grabbed that guitar and I said, I'm going to have him sign this. And I walked in with it. Oh, and you should have saw the looks I got. It's like, what are you doing? What is that? It's like it's from this game, Guitar Hero. You haven't heard of it? So I went into the studio and he looked at that and he goes, oh, my God. I cannot play this game to save my life. I go, really? I thought it would be good. He goes, no, my kids are great at it, but I can't get past the first level or something. It was really funny about it. And he signed that guitar. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's a pretty flexible guy. Like, he'll do a little bit of anything, He's real cool about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good dude. Where are we at? Number 4. Number 4 on my list is a cease and desist order. Not too many people have one of those. When Kiss reunited in 1996 or 4? 96. I think it was 96. And their very first official show of the tour was Tiger Stadium in Detroit.
Yeah, they played with Alice in Chains.
Yes, they did. And wasn't Sponge on that too, I think? There was a third band on that. But anyway, the point of the story is they had an album with what was the current band of Kiss at the time with, Bruce Kulick on guitar and all that stuff. And then they had done the MTV reunion. Oh, wow, people are crazy. Let's reform the band. So they never released that album. And I have, friends in other countries and other places and bootleggers and whatever. So somebody leaked the album to me that was unreleased. And we decided we were going to do 24 hours of all Kiss music at the radio station I was at. And it was a Friday, so we went, if we throw in some of these new tunes that nobody's ever heard during our 24-hour Kiss marathon, we'll be able to play it till Monday, because by the time they can get a hold of a judge for a cease and desist order, it's Friday at 5. We're going to be golden. So that's what we did. We started playing new Kiss songs all weekend. So I got an order signed by the judge and signed by, was it Doc? Doc McGee, I think, signed it, and the record label signed it, and the whole,
Wow.
Yeah, so officials stopped playing that album from a court in New York.
Yeah, and you're not the only radio station who have tried that stunt. Because I was at a radio station across the street that did the same thing with the brand new Boston when it came out. We were told not to answer the phones, not to open up the doors.
Yeah, everything
was on lockdown, and that was like official memos coming from the PD. It was like, what? Don't answer the phones and don't answer the door. So when I first started in radio, Well, let me backtrack a little bit. When I first got to Detroit, because I was in radio before I got to the Motor City, so I was at a ZZ Top show, and I was backstage at a little gathering area. It's kind of like a bar, and so a guy who I had kind of admired in radio and listened to for a long time was standing at the bar talking to Dusty Hill of ZZ Top. Okay. So I walked over and I simply wanted to say, I mean, I knew he was talking to a member of ZZ Top, but I really wanted to say hello to this other disc jockey.
Right.
And tell him, like, hey, I'm Ann Carlini and I've listened to you for a long time. I just want to let you know that I just got this job at a radio station here, and I just wanted to say hi. And and so I stood there. I walked up to him and I stood there, and he just ignored me and kept talking to Dusty.
Right.
And so I kind of backed off and I kind of waited for like a moment in the conversation. And he says, the disc jockey looks at Dusty and says, well, I'll let you go when your groupies are here.
Oh.
And I turned to him and I said, I am not a groupie. I am a disc jockey. I was furious. And I said, I just came over to say hello to you and blah, blah, blah. And I started, Dusty Hill looked at me and he goes, would you like the ZZ Top pin? It had to be one of their official pins.
Let me break this
Yeah,
ice.
exactly.
Here you go.
I go, thank you. Thank you for the pin. So, yeah. And, I worked with that guy later on.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So, anyway, so I still have that ZZ Top pin.
Oh, that's great. 'Cause
Yeah.
it comes with a cool memory, too.
Yeah.
Do you know who Rick Emmett is?
Yeah, from Triumph.
From Triumph. Not everybody does. Triumph was fairly big in certain markets and reasonably big in other markets, but was the first rock star I ever met. Was my favorite band as a teenager. Gave me advice at 17 that I still use to this day. Like, this guy played major role in my life in ways that he'll never know or understand. Anyway, I've met him several times, interviewed him several times. One time he came into the radio station, and there were a stack of CDs for him to sign. And by a stack, I mean, 8 or 10. And so he was just, writing his name on them, setting them down, write his name, set them down. And the last one was a different album than the other 9. And he goes, oh, okay, this one's an earlier album or whatever. I go, yeah, that one's for me. He goes, oh, what do you want me to put on it? And I'm thinking, well, I said, well, just your name's okay. That's fine. I don't need anything other than that. He goes, nah, come on, let me personalize it. And I said, well, what are you going to say? Oh, Steve, you're my best friend. It's always so great to see you, And he kind of laughed and signed the CD and he left. And then later that day, I was grabbing up the CDs and I looked at it and it's exactly what he wrote. Steve, like, you're the best. Oh, it's so great to see you. I'm like, you sarcastic son of a bitch. Like, that was so funny. And just the way he did it, he knew that at some point in time I was going to see that and go, God damn you. So, of course, I still have that CD.
Steve, you're really good friends with Rick Emmett, huh?
Yeah. My best friend in Michigan or something along those lines. Like, oh, my God.
Well, when they do those drop-ins that we have them do at the station, you think we were all best friends. When I'm in town, I listen to Ann Carlini. It's like, oh, yeah, really? So one of the items on my list comes from an album, one of the first albums that I ever bought. It was the Beatles' White Album. And I played that thing until it was just about destroyed. But it wasn't until much later in life, after I saw some other Beatles albums, that I realized that it was printed upside down.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, when you open it up, you see the pictures of all the Beatles. And then the Beatles, on the White Album, it just has the Beatles in black, the name,
Right.
And it's actually on the opposite side that it should be.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I ruined the album playing it over and over again, but it's just a piece that it's unique.
Right.
And I'll just never.
Have you ever seen one anywhere else? Record shows, any of that thing?
I've asked people about it.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen like the front of the Beatles album, like printed upside down? Nope. And I've looked at like in rarities and stuff, and I've never seen anything like it. So but for me, it's my little special thing.
Yeah.
Because I have like a lot of the Beatles albums on vinyl. So, and even though they're just destroyed and some of the covers are like just rags, they're just like torn up pieces of cardboard at this point. It doesn't matter. They're my Beatle albums.
Yep.
And a lot of them my cousin gave to me because then she got into Alice Cooper and she was too cool for the Beatles.
Oh boy.
So anyway, so that's
tell Alice that.
Yeah.
He might be the biggest Beatles fan on the planet,
So it's not really from, it's just my stuff.
Yeah.
That just means something to me. And then I'll just one more thing on my list to go in that category is there used to be a radio station here called WABX.
Yep.
And it was one of the first progressive rock radio stations. And I have an original WABX Air Ace t-shirt. And I love that thing. And I'll never get rid of it.
Has it held up over the years?
Yeah, because it's really only maybe been worn a couple of times.
Nice.
I'm not even sure how I got it. It just appeared one day, and I went, oh, my God.
Hey, one of those.
Yeah, so just being in radio, some of my memorabilia just comes from,
right.
Those are the memories of rock and music are, inevitably tied to the stations that I've worked for. So that's just my list of the things that I care about the most.
Last two on my list. At number 2, I have an odd one because I don't physically have anything. But when I was working with Ted Nugent, which I did a morning show with Ted for a couple of years, I was also working on a solo album. Just whenever I could. No urgency, no nothing. And it was going to be the very first time I ever played guitar on a recording because I had always been the singer. And I was the singer on the solo album too. Well, the bottom line is I asked Ted, can I take one of your guitars home? I want to use it on the album. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure. Like, didn't even bat an eye. So I grabbed one of his Paul Reed Smith guitars, which were pretty rare at that point in time, and I used it on the album. And so now, I don't go back and listen to my own album very much, but on rare occasion I will look at it or it'll come up even in iTunes or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, I used Ted Nugent's guitar on that. I'm like, that is such a weird thing to say, It's a weird thing to even say out loud, but I'm like, yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that really happened.
It's probably surreal.
Yeah, very strange, very strange. And then number 1 for me, the late Paul O'Neill, who died earlier this year, was the guy who created the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And I did some consulting for TSO in the very, very, very early years. And Paul didn't just write music. He wrote entire stories and then built these giant rock operas based on his stories. And one day in the mail, I got this package from Paul. And I'm like, what did you send me now, Paul? And, I open it up. And it is probably about 25 pages typed on an old typewriter. And you can certainly tell between a computer printer, and a typewriter. He had hand-typed the new story that he was going to turn into a Savatage album and wanted me to give him feedback on the story. I'm like, are you kidding me? And, of course, it turned out to be one of my all-time favorite, not just Savatage albums. It's probably in my top 25 albums of all time. And I still have the original script in the package that he mailed to me to read his story and give him feedback.
And he didn't want it back?
No.
How did he not want it back?
I
He
don't
must
know.
have made copies of it.
I told him years later that I had it, and he was like, oh, that's so cool, you should keep it. And I'm like, well, I was going to.
Thank you.
Yeah, he had just clearly forgotten about it. I mean, he sent it off. I had called him back because, he'd already given me his numbers anyway, but he included his phone numbers, where to reach him. So I called him. He was in the recording studio, gave him my feedback on the story, the whole thing. I never got paid for it. I mean, I didn't work for the band, but he would do things like that from time to time. Send me a song and then ask me for feedback. Do you think radio would play it? Do you think, it would reach multiple formats? Do you think it would sound better with a male singer or a female singer? And it was never like I was somehow the final grade. It was just, he knew he could trust my opinion. He knew that I would give him my honest feedback of what I thought. So he would send me things from time to time, and I still have that script. So
Wow,
that's
how nice.
Yeah, something I will treasure forever.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, rest in peace, Paul.
Yeah.
He brought a lot of happiness to a lot of people.
And Trans-Siberian Orchestra touring again this year, so
Yes.
we'll get to see some more of that magic.
This is the sound of.